What is up, everybody? Happy Thursday and welcome back to the stream. Today we have a very, very special show for you. I told you yesterday today's show was going to be pre-recorded because I am currently doing a day trip, taking off early this morning, landing really late tonight, to Chicago for my last speaking event, period, of my book tour for my book that came out about 6 weeks ago, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. As you guys know, I have been traversing the country over the last couple of months, kicking things off in New York. I've been to Colorado several times. I spoke in Texas, here in Florida, and literally everywhere else across the country, trying to spread the truth about who our generation is and give people some hope for the next generation and beyond. It has been full of ups and downs, lots and lots of insanity from all over the country, lots of travel woes, and frankly, I will be very glad to not be on quite as many airplanes after our speaking engagement today. But I thought it would be fun for our stream today to cap off a beautiful book tour, interacting with some of my favorite other political commentators and social media hosts to put together a compilation of our best of the book tour moments so that you guys, in case you just joined us in this community, I know we've been growing like crazy across platforms, can follow along with what we've been up to over the last 6 weeks or so. I am so deeply touched and honored by the response that this book has gotten across the country from people of all generations. And I'm really excited to see people's minds being changed every single day about why there are endless reasons to have hope for our generation. It is not as doom and gloom and misery as the media wants to paint it out to be when it comes to leadership with Generation Z at the helm and the massive cultural changes that we are making each and every day by normalizing things like marriage and family, real food and faith, and everything else, again, in a countercultural rebellion against the people who came before us. I think when we started out with this tour and when the book originally came out, there was a lot of skepticism, even from people who I absolutely love in the conservative media space, who have only heard negative, horrible, apocalyptic predictions for Generation Z's future in American politics and in culture. But I hope and think I've successfully changed a whole lot of minds along the way. And it has just been absolutely incredible to reach so many people around the world with this message of encouragement. If you guys haven't already picked up your own copy of The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America, you can grab yours at the link in the description of this video or the link in any of my bios and or anywhere else books are sold. I've made a couple of impromptu pop-ins to Barnes & Noble across the country to sign my name in a couple of copies, so you might just get lucky to find a signed copy in your own backyard. And again, I am just so grateful for the outpouring of support that you guys have given in turning this book into a reality. Without further ado, let's jump in right now to the best of the book tour moments, kicking things off with none other than Ben Shapiro.
She has a brand new book out titled The End of the Alphabet about Gen Z. And she says the contrary to popular opinion, including maybe my own, Gen Z might actually be good, actually. So, Isabel, explain to me how Gen Z is actually good.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for having me. And, you're clearly in the majority opinion, because this is most often what I hear from people, that the dreaded Gen Z is destroying America in some capacity. As you guys know, at the Daily Wire, thanks to amazing voices like our mutual friend Brett Cooper, though, there is a changing tide happening with our generation at this point in time. Politically, we know that politics is downstream from culture, so I think it'll take some time to catch up. But if you look at cultural lifestyles, choices, and even values, Generation Z has been proven over and over again with data and evidence to be the most conservative generation America has seen since World War II. 93% of us still want to get married in a time where we have the lowest marriage rate in American history. We're rejecting this idea we have to spend $250,000 on a degree in underwater lesbian dance theory in order to be successful. And 62% of us have started our own businesses instead. We're rejecting a godless society. And in fact, there's a huge upswing in the number of Gen Zers who are believing in God and regularly practicing a religion. And even on the seemingly smaller things that I don't think we often think about as impacting culture and politics, you see a more traditional values-oriented generation. We're deleting our dating apps, throwing away our birth control, eating real food instead of lab-grown crap or plant-based chemicals that really are just made in a factory and not very good for us. And really what we're seeing is this pendulum swing back toward reality and objective truth, which tracks throughout human history as young people rebelling against the people who came before us. It just so happens punk rock today looks like being a conservative.
So, Isabel, why do we elderly people have this perception that Gen Z is actually moving in the opposite direction? I mean, you see Gallup polls, for example, that are coming out, and they're explaining that a wildly disproportionate number of Gen Zers are now identifying as LGBTQ plus divided by sign minus and all of the rest. You see a huge number of Gen Zers who seem to be sucked into woke. What are we missing here?
On the LGBTQ front, this is clearly the biggest cultural issue of our time. And there was a new study that came out just a couple days ago saying over 30% of teenage girls are self-identifying as LGBTQ+, which is enough to make anybody stop in their tracks and think, what are we doing wrong? This is so terrible. Really, it's a matter of data. And I know you love research just as much as me, Ben, but when we keep adding on to the plus sign with infinite letters and acronyms onto the end of that alphabet saga, you start seeing more and more identities that really mean nothing, but are in line with this trendy Vogue idea of being part of the pride community, like demisexual, for example, which literally means that you're sexually attracted to some people, but not all people, but especially people you have a romantic connection with. So I think those numbers are totally inflated and are specifically designed to normalize what the pride movement is specifically seeking to accomplish in society.
Isabel Brown joins us now. She's a Gen Z streamer and author of the book, The End of the Alphabet.
What should happen with TikTok? Should we ban it based on your understanding of the app? And how did your content do?
I wish we had 3 hours to talk about TikTok, but short answer, no. I think it would be a grave mistake to ban the platform. A lot of what you're hearing about security and data concerns really is manufactured to try to generate news headlines here. If they were really serious about that, we'd be talking about every social media platform and several other national security issues. But if I can say one last thing for why you should grab a copy
I gotta
of
say,
this.
Isabella, that analysis, which sounds like a very smart former CIA officer that I know, was incredibly astute, and I'm happy to hear someone.
That's Buck's argument he's been making for some time.
Buck.
In case you don't know,
now.
Isabel.
I'm happy to hear at least one person from the purple-haired communist generation understands what's really going on.
Oh, we're going to keep fighting for TikTok, surely. But really, I wrote this book because now more than ever before, when we've never been so divided and angry and miserable and pessimistic about the future of our country, I think it's time for us to return to our roots of what it means to be an American. And what do I mean by that? The people who built the foundation of this country were not decrepit, falling apart, completely senile old men that make up the entirety of the United States Congress and the White House today, which is probably why we feel so pessimistic. Our founding fathers on July 4th, 1776 were 18, 19, 21 years old. Even Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, was only 33 years old on July 4th, 1776. If we're serious about building a path for our country that's based in objective truth, marriage, taking back entrepreneurship, and just the idea of freedom of expression, it has to start with giving young people a seat at the table. Let's just look at religion. By the end of 2021, our generation said that we overwhelmingly did not believe in God. There was less than 25% of us that did. We were Gen Z. We were trending in a more atheistic direction. But by the end of 2023, just 2 years later, over a third of our generation now says we believe in God. We're regularly attending religious services. If you look at denominational breakdown in the Catholic Church, Gen Z is the most likely demographic to prefer and seek out the traditional Latin Mass. So talk about the biggest cultural backlash you possibly could.
That's crazy. So you're saying in a span of 2 years, it went from a quarter who said that they were atheist,
a quarter who said they believed in anything bigger than ourselves.
We only a quarter believed in something bigger. So that's 3/4 are atheists. Yeah. That's crazy. That's intense because you look back decades and you're talking like 10% of the population maybe at large. I mean, it's in that zone, in that area. And now you're saying it's a third, so that number has gone up. What is that? Let's do our, you're this hard
math
science
is
background.
not my favorite thing in the world.
What is that?
But
7-8% have gone up. It's gone up 7-8% in just 2 years.
Which is millions of people, if you really, I mean, that's crazy just to think about. And so that's also manifesting politically. What do I mean by that? If you look at 17-year-old boys today, seniors in high school, a recent study just came out that found they are the most politically conservative with a capital C than they have been in 50 years. Well over 70% of 17-year-old boys in America today are politically very right-wing, which is insane. No one saw that coming in any way, shape, or form, especially as we've attacked masculinity in society for so long. But it's necessitated this renaissance of strong men in society. It's that diagram we always talk about, right? Weak times create strong men, and then the cycle just continues to repeat. Women, you're right, do tend to be trending more to the left right now in most of the polling that we're seeing. But I wonder how much of that is actually representative of our entire generation, or if they're just capturing current voters rather than the entire spectrum of Gen Z, most of whom are still teenagers and have yet to vote. That cultural pendulum shift for young women towards marriage, towards neglecting big pharma and saying we don't want anything to do with you anymore, towards eating real food, towards religion. These are radically conservative lifestyle choices that, of course, as we know, because politics is downstream from culture, is going to impact our political views as well. I think it's just taking a little bit longer to catch up for young women than it is for young men, because that assault on masculinity started so much earlier than today's all-out affront on womanhood. I mean, you can't even call yourself a woman today. You're a birthing person or a person who menstruates or a chest feeder, which is ridiculous.
Sounds like what you're describing about these high school boys, which is incredible. You're saying 70% of them are actually identifying as conservative, or more, or do they say they're conservative, or
they self-identify themselves as politically conservative, very conservative.
That's incredible. And so that is maybe the backlash to the rejection that's been going on for decades now of masculinity. And so the new rebellion is, well, I want to be a good, strong man.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I want to be, blue haired. I'm not to say you can't ever dye your hair blue, but I want to be just kind of beta, as they say, beta male or whatever. But for women, you're saying, it sounds like your theory, which I like it. It's saying that women, yes, they seem to be far left here increasingly. Even the trend is not good even among Gen Z women, but these things yo-yo. There's going to be a backlash to that because you go too far one extreme and all of a sudden people want to reject that, rebel against the extreme that they've been handed.
I'm joined by Isabel Brown, an independent creator and author who I think has been on the show before. I'd be shocked and scandalized if Isabel has not been on this show before, reaches millions of people daily with her Gen Z perspective. And she's the author of a new book, which I have not read yet, but I look forward to receiving, The End of the Alphabet. When I saw the title, The End of the Alphabet, I said, whoa, she's getting a little hardcore here. We're taking the eradication rhetoric to another level, because I assumed it was LGBT, but that's not what you're talking about. You were talking about the generations and your generation, the much maligned Zoomers.
Much maligned indeed, although sadly maligned. I feel like our generation, Michael, has just been so alienated and deeply misunderstood by those who come before us. We've been written off as hopeless, as socialist, as entitled crybabies with no hope for the future. But the truth is, all of the data and polling suggests Gen Z is actually the most conservative generation America has seen since World War II. We're certainly living that out culturally, and I think it's going to come about politically as well here in the next several election cycles.
I hope that the latter is true. I'm skeptical that they'll actually end up voting the right way. But I do agree with you, just in my own anecdotal experience. They seem more conservative. They seem more right-wing in one way or another than the millennials. I feel the millennials are just the most soy Obama generation ever, and they never moved out, and they're just, it's the Obama, it's the hope and change shirt. It's just so lame, And
it is. And the picture that immediately comes to mind for most people is always the young woman in the construction vest the day after the 2016 election, when Donald Trump was elected president.
Donald J. Trump is now president of the United States. President Obama.
But frighteningly, millennials are now raising Gen Alpha, who comes after us. So say a few extra prayers in the spirit of Theology Thursday, because those kids need all the help we can get.
Are my kids Gen Alpha? What are the years of Gen? They are, huh? Wow.
Yeah, they should be. So Generation Z started in 1997 when I was born, and all the way down to 2012. So anyone born after that, generally speaking, depends on who you ask, is Gen Alpha, which is a very cool sounding name, I have to say.
Wow. So you get to the end and you got the Zoomers, and they react in some ways against the soy liberalism of the millennials and the boomers. And but then what about all this weird stuff that's creeping into Gen Z? You were talking, whatever it was, a week or two ago about, did I see something about a Christian Ouija board and just like a ton of weird occult, like sex stuff? Like what are the Zoomers playing with there?
The truth is, I don't think a lot of this stuff is coming from within our own generation. So I'll put a pin in all of the overtly satanic, demonic, occult references happening in our society. But if you look at just broadly what's happening with Generation Z, you're right. Like every generation who came before us, we're rebelling against the people who came before us. Typically, we would consider punk rock and countercultural and very rebellious to be covered in tattoos and piercings and spiky hair and part of metal punk rock bands. But now, ironically, to be punk rock is to embrace traditional conservative values. It's to want to get married. It's to believe in God instead of worshiping your social media feed or the government. It's to reject these woke four-year universities that really aren't contributing anything successful or happy or fulfilling to our lives. And that's exactly what we're seeing, especially on the faith side of things. In 2021, only less than 25% of Gen Z said that we believed in a higher power at all. And we were trending more in an atheist, godless direction. But by the end of 2023, over 1/3 of our generation says that we proudly believe in God, and we're trending much more towards traditional religious values and even tradition with a capital T inside of Christianity, with a huge resurgence to the Catholic faith, much to everybody's surprise. So I think a lot of this noise with the overtly satanic, the occult, the demonic is happening by those older than us trying to attach that image to our generation in this spiritual warfare.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, Lil Nas X and Doja Cat are not exactly Zoomers. And to your point on punk rock, in a way, that's always sort of what punk rock was. Johnny Ramone, I believe, was a pretty hardcore right-winger. I think he was a Republican. And so that was always a bit of a rebellion against, like, the hippies, right? Frankly, there were a lot of rockers at that time who would take on overtly far right-wing, even, like, fascist symbolism. So there was a pushback against the hippies, and then... But then what? Then the culture keeps moving to the left. So what you're describing, I'm encouraged by it. I see what you're seeing. These young Zoomers who are becoming more religious, who are becoming more trad. The fact, I've been talking about traditionalism since I was a very little boy and reading Edmund Burke and Michael Oakeshott. And that was very out of fashion in the GOP. The GOP was very libertarian and squishy and neocon and stuff. And then the fact that trad is now a term that people use, shocking. That's amazing. I love that. The fact that a lot of them are becoming Catholic in particular, whoa, man, that's amazing. I mean, frankly, I reverted in similar circumstances. I was an atheist for 10 years. Maybe I was a little bit ahead of the trend, but I reverted too, probably for a lot of the same reasons that Zoomers are reverting and converting. But okay, but when I go to events that I'm doing, often there are a ton of Zoomers who are yelling at me, and they're all like half lesbians with purple hair. So, what about how do you make sense of everyone's non-binary cousin and the skyrocketing rates of trans identification in the Zoomers?
I think both are true at the same time, which I know is a bit of a cop-out answer, but we are seeing this extremely left-wing, they, them, I want nothing to do with any semblance of a traditional value faction of Generation Z. But I think it's very, very small. They are incredibly loud, and they're promoted in algorithms and even by our president of the United States holding roundtables with these people at the White House to represent our generation. But the vast, vast majority of Gen Z truly is embracing conservative, traditional cultural values and feels very disenfranchised politically in America. It's really telling to me that of the new registered voters for Generation Z, people who are registering for the first time, more than 52% of them are registering as independents. They're saying we are not putting our blind allegiance towards any political party. Frankly, we're a little tired of the uniparty behavior that we've seen in Washington over the last several decades, where you people have been in office more than twice the time that we've been alive, and you keep promising every 2, 4, or 6 years to fix the same problems, and you're the only people that can do it. But then if they actually fixed it, they would be out of a job, and they refuse to cede any power to the next generation, be that Gen X or millennials or Generation Z, right? So I think we're witnessing a big political shift, but it's starting with the cultural one. And the vast majority of Generation Z, regardless of how they might identify with a particular party or a color hat or the letter next to their name on their voter registration, are embracing these trad values. I think Donald Trump is mirroring a lot of that for us politically by trying to break this system of proving your loyalty in Washington, D.C. and getting the party approval and making sure you're always polished and saying the right thing in a presidential speech. He's saying what we're all thinking. He's just courageous enough to be the one to give it a microphone or perhaps a tweet post button. And I think we're really gravitating towards that.
Right. He did become CEO on day one. There was never any Congressman Trump. There was never any Attorney General Trump. Could you imagine if there were?
What's interesting is I think it's more appropriate to be aggressive. And by aggressive, I don't mean physically aggressive, but like orally aggressive when arguing with a man than it is a woman.
Yes, like, it's a completely different strategy.
Seeing a man argue with a woman and being aggressive. But what's been interesting is to see these clips of Matt Walsh being very aggressive as he talks to what looks like a woman.
Exactly.
And I find myself being like, how dare you oh, that's a dude.
It's not a woman,
who's mocking
actually.
a woman. May not be intending to mock a woman, but it seems more offensive than blackface in my estimation. So I remind myself, it is interesting. I think men do appreciate being spoken to in a more of aggressive manner if they believe that the speaker has their best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? I mean, how many women talks do you go to where the one on the stage is like, suck it up and be better? Like, there's a lot of men's talks where we're told that and we love it.
Yeah.
But again, we love it because, to use an example of Jordan Peterson, we think he loves us. We think he wants what's best for us, right? So when he says, like, get your shit together and you're like, thank you. You're right. I've often thought, not being a woman, how women must take that, because when I hear women give talks to other women, I don't hear anything like that. And I wonder either that, well, women need to hear that. Like, be a better wife. You're terrible. You say, well, I can't cook. Get a frigging cookbook, right? Or do women just not react well to that kind of thing.
You know, it's funny. It makes me think of how women and men fight with each other, right? If you're around a married couple who's been married for 20, 30 years, your parents or your grandparents who might have even been married longer, women always have this cliche that it's not what you said, it's how you said it, right? And I think the delivery is so important, even more than the substance sometimes, in how you reach women, because newsflash, we are different, right? Men and women are not the same. God created us very differently and very intentionally differently because we operate on our intuition, we operate on our empathy, we operate on our feelings much more than men do.
Just a real quick insert there. That might be true, but I don't think it's unreasonable to object to somebody based on how they said something. I think that's a completely reasonable thing that men need to take stock of.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think it's just in marrying the facts and the feelings side of things together. Yeah. That's the missing link that I think is going to be the game changer for how to reach Generation Z with truth in a truthless world. Interestingly, young men who are seniors in high school right now, so we're talking about 17 to 18-year-olds, are overwhelmingly conservative. Like there are polls everywhere. And I say conservative in more of the secular sense, but also in the religious sense. They're wanting this traditional conservative Catholic lifestyle in their Christian faith as well. But when it comes to how they're voting and the policies that they might support in our government, overwhelmingly are leaning towards the very, very, very right. And
where are these polls being?
There's a ton of them, but one just came out. It was a big study that's been conducted since the 1970s.
No problem.
And I can't remember the name of it. I talked about it on my stream literally yesterday, so you can go look it up. But it's a fascinating analysis because there are many that are now backing this one up. That one just recently said only 28% of high school senior boys would consider themselves to be liberal.
That's
only 28%, which blows my mind because we live in this time where everyone's saying your generation is ruining society and they're these blue-haired freaks that don't even know their own gender. That's really not true for men, at the very least. Men are very much overreacting to what's happening in society and wanting to bring masculinity back. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Ben Shapiros and the Matt Walshes and the Jordan Petersons of the world who have taken this very aggressive approach and the facts don't care about your feelings highway that's been so effective for men because men operate outside of the realm of emotions. You guys think about one thing at a time. This goes back to my science neuroanatomy route.
Definitely true.
You have the nothing box, which I fundamentally cannot understand. Like if you're listening to this right now and your husband or your boyfriend or fiance says, I'm thinking about nothing, he's probably actually thinking about nothing. He's not lying to you. Don't make up ideas in your brain. But men have the capacity to do that women don't.
I think this is right. And the more I've gotten to know my good wife, the more I've seen this to be the case. Someone used the analogy of, well, even take, for example, our different laptops. You open up my laptop, I might have 2 windows open. Yep. She has 18,000 windows open. Actually, I did a Skype chat with Ori, our friend from Locals, and she shared her screen with me, and I nearly fainted seeing how many tabs she had pulled up there.
She has the worst tabs I've ever seen.
That's like a good analogy maybe for the male and female brain, where my wife's thinking of 1,000 things at once, and I really only can think of 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, you have one tab open, and then when you're ready to move to the next tab, you close that one.
Yes,
we open up 40,000 tabs at the exact same time, which is why things all run together. So I actually just had a really interesting conversation recently with Charlie Kirk about this, about we're winning with young men because men are responding to the facts of things. They're responding to the aggressive approach. They're responding to the more 30,000 foot level of things. I think we're really losing with women, and the polls are exactly the opposite with women my age. They are increasingly more and more and more liberal with time, which I find interesting because we're negating all of the emotion in the conversation. And I think there's a need to mirror and marry those things because we're not robots. We're not computers. We're not animatronic algorithms that operate outside of feelings. We have souls, and we were created that way for a reason, to have empathy with one another, to see God in somebody else because that's how God created them, right? In his own image. And we're missing all of that.
I think this is true of both men and women. I mean, maybe it's more true with women. I don't know. But I mean, advertisements, if it was merely about the facts, they would just list bullet points on their advertisements with like, here are the links to click to follow up on the studies that show that this is the most reliable automobile or something like that. No, all adverts first prey upon your feelings and then hopefully your feelings align with something that's true.
Yeah, like a car advertisement. Think about that, for example. I drive a Jeep Wrangler. I'm a very Colorado girl through and through. It's my dream car. I love my car. Every time you're on TV watching football on Sunday afternoon, if you see a Jeep commercial, they're driving through the rugged mountains on a four-wheel drive trail in Colorado, and it speaks to your sense of adventure.
Of Jeep people seem to be women.
This is true. This is true.
This bothered me immensely because about 4 years ago, I bought a Jeep Wrangler.
Did you really?
I thought, what a manly car. How cool am I? Not cool, because every Jeep I passed, there was a Sheila in the front. And you tell me what this means. They have rubber duckies on the dashboard. I do not like this.
I'm so glad you asked. I love the ducky thing, and I just had to explain this to my fiance. We were at the store, and at the front of the store in Target, there's like the little dollar stop or whatever where things are super cheap. We were looking for a white elephant gift for his family gift exchange coming up, and I saw the cutest little rubber duckies on sale for $1, and I just gathered as many of them up as I could because there's this tradition that I didn't learn until I bought a Jeep Wrangler that you duck other people's Jeeps. So when you see a Jeep out and around town, you take a rubber ducky and you put it on the handle of their driver's side door. So you collect them over time because other random people have given you a duck as part of the Jeep club. See, it's the same reason we do the Jeep wave when we drive.
I hate that so much. I can't even express it to you. So I'm really glad.
Maybe it is more of a woman thing. I don't know.
I want like He-Man figurines maybe.
There you go. I have a cute little hula girl on my dashboard. She's
there
cute.
You go. Well, thank you for explaining that to me, because I've wondered what the bloody hell's going on. How do we get onto Jeeps? Feelings.
Feelings, your sense of adventure, right?
Yeah.
The commercials, the advertisements, even posts that you see on social media, it's all very adventurous, outdoorsy people. They want to get out in nature. They're not confined to the city life. They're super exciting people. That's why people buy that car, because it speaks towards that sense of lifestyle, that sense of culture, that sense of adventure that is deep-seated in your emotions and how your personality is structured. What we're doing in politics, and I think what we do in content creation, even larger than politics, is we're selling ideas, we're selling concepts, we're selling values. And I think we forget about the marketing piece of that quite often, because most people out there really don't know what camp they belong to. They really don't know what party best suits their values. They really don't know who to follow on social media. And escaping some of the realm of working in that 9 to 5 every single day has been very eye-opening for me in this last year and a half or so, making more friends through our church or getting to know people in Miami since I've moved there. Most people don't watch Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh every single day, 365 days a year. And I hope not, right?
I'm sure Matt would hope not. Yeah.
It's just a lot to take in. And most people have jobs. Most people have families. Like, they don't have time to constantly be invested in every single piece of news or commentary or political argument that's happening on the internet every day. So when you're selling ideas to those people who aren't watching every single day, there is a level of marketing that has to go with that.
Yes.
We've clearly nailed it with young men. They're very much buying into everything that we're saying. But I think we're missing the vehicle for how to market those ideas to young women, which is our emotions and feeling.
Even if you found someone that you were matched with perfectly, you already know all the movies they like. You know exactly their favorite playlist on Spotify. You know what clothes they wear. You've seen all the pictures of them. You maybe have traded nudes already and everything else. And that it's removed, like, I guess magic is really the only word I can come up. There's probably a better word, but like
mystery was a good one
mystery
too.
or magic. There's none of that left for your real life because of the way we've itemized everything. And again, I'm not anti-technology. It's just kind of the way it is, and it is a tool.
You don't have an opportunity to really get to know someone over time anymore and build a foundation of trust and build the opportunity to develop shared hobbies and inside jokes, because you literally know every single thing about someone by one glance at their Instagram feed or their Facebook profile, even though nobody uses Facebook anymore. And I feel really lucky to have escaped a lot of that. I met my fiance the old-fashioned way in person at that same Turning Point USA conference, actually. And learning, what his favorite candy was, what his favorite movie was, and the bigger question is, how do you feel about
what's his
God?
favorite candy? I always think he's going to love...
Can you guess?
I always think it's gummy bears. We have this running joke with him that he loves gummy bears.
He likes gummy bears, but that's not his favorite.
Skittles? Is it Skittles?
No, although we ate a lot of Skittles that weekend when we met each other, because that's one of my favorite candies. Sour, chewy sweet tarts are his.
Sour.
No.
What?
Not the chewy.
Just
normal. Sorry.
Wow, we're being fact-checked in real time here. This is
normal
tough.
sour sweet tarts, not the chewy. Got it. Sorry, I'm going to be in trouble later.
The fact that you even looked at the camera to do that shows that you are a content creator from Gen Z and all
I
of that.
apologize to every party involved. But you're right. In the dating world, that has been narrowed down to a screen. But I think there's a lot of hope for that. And this is one example of why I chose to write this book, because even though this is the norm that we are living through, and we've changed everything we know about about American culture to basically exist on this. Gen Z is saying, you know, we want a little bit more than that. We want more substance. We want more purpose. And dating is maybe the best example of what that looks like. We're all unanimously deleting our dating apps. There are several articles that have come out in the last few months about how Match Group, which owns Tinder and Hinge and several other competing companies, is freaking out about how to retain Gen Z as a customer base because 90+% of us say we've had horrible experiences on the app. Gen Z women are overwhelmingly throwing away our birth control because no matter where you fall on the partisan political spectrum, no matter what your intimacy life looks like, we realize we're feeling really sick and we're slowly poisoning ourselves in the process. And why do I need to take this, to be honest with you? What a weird reality that that's become normal. And 93% of us, a study just came out the other day, still want to get married in a time where we have the lowest marriage rate in American history, which is crazy to me. That in and of itself, that marriage is no longer a normal human institution in the United States. And yet 93% of our generation looks at that and says, even though that's not normal, I want that because it's better than what's normal. It offers more than what's normal.
Yeah, what does that tell you about the truth in general? So they're getting sent all the wrong messages. And then I had never heard this until you said it to me a few months ago, that Gen Z actually is breaking more conservative than at least the two previous generations.
Yeah.
What do you think that says about the truth in general, that you could get all the wrong messages, you could go down that path, and that somehow there's like a bumper, like it's bumper bowling, and something kind of pushes people back?
This is a great segue into the meat and potatoes of the end of the alphabet, because you're right. There is sort of this pendulum that's going back and forth between all of the generations. You can call it a bumper, you can call it whatever you want. But I say this all the time. What does every young generation have in common throughout all of human history? We want to rebel against the people who came before us. If you're a parent of teenagers, you'll know more than anyone else. Your teenagers say, you've never experienced what I've experienced. I'm going to do it my own way. And that happens at the 30,000-foot societal level too. 20, 30 years ago, being countercultural in America might have looked like spiking your hair and putting tattoos all over your body and piercing everything and putting a leather jacket on and sticking it to the man in a punk rock band.
Right.
But now sticking it to the man is quite literally believing there is such thing as objective truth, is wanting to get married instead of sleep with as many people as humanly possible and follow the advice of the manosphere or the radical feminism community. It's wanting to have kids in a society that's begging you don't have kids for the sake of your career, for the sake of the environment, for the sake of your personal life. We're moving out of big cities. I've been reading lots of big studies about this, that we want more suburban or rural areas to reconnect with nature. We're eating real food in a time where everything is hyper processed or full of chemicals or even grown in a laboratory. And perhaps most encouraging for me is that we're believing in something bigger than what's right in front of our face again. We're embracing God and belief in a higher power again, which nobody saw coming in our hyper atheistic society. But that is to be punk rock and countercultural, is to be conservative. And when I say that word, it doesn't necessarily mean like the red MAGA
This was already my next question, actually. So go ahead. Go ahead. You're good. We've done this before.
That, especially when I'm talking peer to peer and they go, I'm not conservative. What the heck are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't mean politically. I vote for the Republican Party. I support every policy that Donald Trump absolutely loves. But culturally, embracing traditional values in a conserving way, conservative in that sense. We are the most conservative generation America has seen since World War II. And it just seems to be trending further in that direction.
So let's go to that part that you just jumped over, that political part then.
Yeah. So the late, great Andrew Breitbart is famous for saying that politics is always downstream from culture, that if you want to change who sits in the Oval Office or what Congress is debating on any given day, you have to start with changing how people live their day-to-day lives. We've seen the opposite, I think, of what's happening with Gen Z, with millennials and Gen Xers in your generation, unfold in real time throughout my lifetime in America. The left has strategically planted seeds for decades that they knew wouldn't take root quite yet, but were going to pay off in the long run, of overhauling the education system, trying to take over Hollywood and poison our brains with as much as they possibly could in the entertainment content that we were watching, taking over social media companies to make sure they could control the algorithm and see what you were engaging with every day, sharing and saving and downloading. Mainstream media, obviously, we know that's been gone for a long time. So today, the left, the radical, authoritarian left, really has strategically gained control of every pillar of American culture, from the church to Hollywood to government and everything in between. And we've seen that happen because of culture, now manifest with very disastrous political policies that are leading America in a race to the bottom for the rest of the world, that are seeing what can be possible, but in the wrong direction.
Right. So
for
how
the
do we
United
how do we
States.
hold those two ideas, that the generation is coming around and also that, well, they've destroyed all the institutions in front of you? Like, do you think your generation, well, I suppose it's in the subtitle of the book, do you want to save those institutions? Do you want to rebuild all those institutions? I mean, what do you think the actual course will be?
Yes, both, depending on the situation.
Okay.
I think some institutions are absolutely worth saving, and some we just have to let go as an era of bygone American history, which is okay. That happens in every major revolutionary moment, 1776 moment, if you will, in our own country's history, but also in
I learned
global
about
history.
it because of cats. There was a cat video showing me
Well done, Dave. We love to see that. But whether that's reclaiming the institution of marriage, for example, which is quite traditional, or what Gen Z is doing educationally, foregoing traditional 4-year liberal arts degrees, which I now like to call leftist arts degrees, because let's be honest, what are you studying? Non-binary dance theory and race of my cat? I mean, that's just the dumbest thing ever, but that's what we're actually paying $250,000 to get a piece of paper for. We're realizing that's not really going to make me successful, even though everybody tells me it's going to. So I don't want to pay for that. I'll go to trade school, or I'll start my own business and be CEO on day one, which 62% of our generation has already done. So those cultural levers of power, be it our intimate personal relationships in the dating world and marriage, even our friendships, to education, to entrepreneurship and commerce, I think you're starting to see us pull the levers of power back culturally. And because of that, we know that's going to swing politically as well.
I have to ask you, before I let you go, one question, and it's clear to me that you've got, a real grasp on the statistics here. So I'm sure the minute I cite the statistic, you're going to tell me why it doesn't say what it looks like it says. But, your book is called The End of the Alphabet, and it immediately puts me in mind of these Gallup polls that are always coming out about how much of Gen Z is identifying as LGBT. Which to me is like, irrespective of what you think about any one of the kinds of individual represented by those letters, like to identify as LGBTQ is like unequivocally a bad thing. It's not actually about sex. It's more about this bizarre view of men and women that we've kind of been talking about, and this like political commitment. But yeah, so here's a 2021 survey, I guess, that came out, then it was publicized in 2022, that 20% of Gen Z adults are identifying as LGBTQ. There have been others as well. Tell me about this. Like, how real is that? And is that trend worrisome to you?
I'm so glad that you brought up this statistic, Spencer, because I actually write about this one quite extensively in my book. And it's funny that you say the idea of the end of the alphabet. The title of my book is bringing to mind the alphabet people. That was never my intention with the title of this book, but you are the third person in the podcast world that has asked me that. Michael Knowles said, I'm assuming it's like a call to exterminate all the LGBT people. And I said, no, not really. But it's been funny to see that as like a secondary nature of this, because maybe that's the biggest bad rap that our generation gets, that we are this, in my words, how I say it in the book, super gay, like super trans generation, which everybody likes to say. And obviously the data supports that. That Gallup poll that you mentioned is frightening, that just came out a few years ago, saying that year over year with every single generation, we are seeing a doubling of the number of people who are identifying as LGBTQ. So what used to be 1% of the population for 4 generations ago has turned into 1 in 5 Gen Zers self-identifying as LGBTQ+. And when you read that on face value, it's horrifying. And I think what immediately comes to mind is the people like Dylan Mulvaney that you see on your TikTok feed, or the stories of kids peeing in litter boxes in their middle schools in Oklahoma, and like the most asinine, insane versions of these stories. But the more I did research into it and the more I started thinking about it, I kept coming back to the little plus sign at the end of LGBTQ+. And the more that we've normalized identities that never existed 6 months ago or a year ago or 5 years ago or a decade ago, the more I've realized that not really are we changing the percentage of people identifying as part of this community.
we're broadening the parameters of the community at large. So this is problem number one. Problem number two is that it's become a cultural fad and this trendy, in vogue thing to change your gender, even if you're not really changing your gender. So I'll come back to that. But starting at broadening the parameters, when you talk about the plus sign, you might be talking about somebody who identifies as demisexual. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term before, Spencer.
Oh, please. Oh, Isabel. yeah. I'm not that out of touch. Yes, I know about all of these identities in there. Yeah,
right.
Some of them are just like
demisexual, DEMI, literally translates, is defined by experts in the LGBTQ community as someone who is sexually attracted to some people, but not all people, but especially people that you have a romantic connection with. So like literally every human being could identify as demisexual. And there's 8,000 other labels that didn't exist 6 months ago that people are just making up on the spot to have something to hold on to with a letter next to their name or a new pronoun that's ridiculous, but doesn't really exist. And I think that's hyperinflating a lot of those numbers, but people want to feel like they're a part of this culturally in vogue, progressive, trendy thing that all of their friends are a part of, which then brings me to the next problem with this. Abigail Shrier writes about this quite frequently, especially in her book, Irreversible Damage, which is incredible, and I could not put it down when I read it, that especially for teenage girls, gender transition has become what eating disorders were in the 1990s or what suicide clusters were and group depression with your friend group in the early 2000s at the high school level. Now we're seeing clusters of friend groups the exact same way we saw with eating disorders and with suicides throughout the last several decades. Have the first friend say, I don't really want to be a girl anymore, but I also don't think I really want to be a boy. But being a girl sucks. And if you've ever been a teenage girl, it sucks and everybody hates it and it's the worst few years of your life. So I'm just going to be neither. And I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just going to cut my hair and wear different clothes and go by a different name and maybe take a few pills. And that part's not great. But for the most part, I won't even do anything dramatic about it. I'm just going to start identifying as something else. And then you're seeing the entire friend group rally around it when none of these girls have any history of gender dysphoria. They certainly don't exhibit any signs of this at home with their families. And so it comes as a total shock to parents, but then the parents are reinforced by the school guidance counselors, the pediatrician, every trusted adult in their lives that they have to approve and affirm this direction for their daughter or their daughter is going to kill themselves. Maybe nobody has been as outspoken about this as Chloe Cole, and she's absolutely phenomenal in sharing her experience with gender transition and now detransitioning. But literally every single adult in her life, after she randomly got the idea, I don't think I want to be a girl, being a girl sucks, everybody said, would you rather have an alive son or a dead daughter to her parents? So that obviously is inflating a lot of this stuff artificially as well, because we're talking about children and teenagers, which sadly is the number one target for who these people are trying so desperately to transition. But I don't really think 20% of our generation is LGBTQ+. I think 20% of teenagers are wearing different clothes and cutting their hair and going by a different name or saying, I'm demisexual because I need a label in order to culturally fit in. But it's going to go out of fashion just as quickly as it came into it. You used a word there that I loved, independent, and that's exactly what's happening, particularly with the younger cohort of our generation. So those that are first-time registered voters going into November, 53% of them are registering as independent with a capital I. They are saying, my vote does not blindly belong to you, either party, and there is a huge renaissance of critical thinking in the political space and with these political policies that nobody really saw coming, because I think we've all talked so much about indoctrination and groupthink and all of these things in politics and in academia over the last several years. In rebellion of those trying to get us all to think exactly the same way, we're saying, hang on a second, I want to ask more questions about who's running for president, and do I really agree with that? Do I agree with this mainstream opinion on abortion? Do I agree with this thing I was just taught on gender ideology in my psych class? Let's think a little bit more critically about that. And so that independent voter base is absolutely growing. If you study exit polling from the last several elections in 2018, 2020, and 2022, the graph looks like a perfect diagonal line. If you remember high
school algebra, the sample y equals mx plus b graph, towards more conservative politicians, policies, ballot initiatives, etc. And when you hear this overwhelming narrative, Gen Z is so progressive, they want this and that and this and that, it's a whole lot more nuanced than 99% of the things you're seeing in the mainstream media. A great example is abortion. I think everybody on the left is expecting Gen Z to vote to codify Roe v. Wade going into November and codify just abortion on demand through all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason. That's what's being asked from the Joe Biden-Kamala Harris administration of this group of young voters. You can look at a poll and see Gen Z supports abortion in the majority, but 9 in 10 voters under the age of 45 support at least some restrictions on abortion, which is a dramatically different picture than what the White House and the Biden campaign is trying to paint for America. No rules, anything goes, just do whatever you want. And so I'm loving that independent renaissance of thought, of critical thinking, because it's allowing us not just to say, my vote belongs to this party, I consider myself this color on my voter registration, but to ask about objective truth, about values for our country, to paint a picture of where we're going that isn't necessarily tied to whoever the most powerful person in the party is at that time.
Yeah, it's hard to, identity politics and groupthink. It's hard to be like, Gen Z thinks this. Really? There's like 40 million
70,
Gen Z?
70 million of us. We're
so
soon
there's
to be
80
the
million
largest,
millennials? How many?
70 million Gen Zers. So together, we will be the largest voting bloc for the first
millennials
time
and
ever
Gen Z.
in the
There's
next few
70
elections.
million Gen Z. There's 80 million millennials. There's 76 million baby boomers. These are the largest cohorts of generations in America. Gen Z thinks this. It's like, really? You tell me how 70 million people think? It always frustrates me when you hear all the, not identity politics and all that. But Malik, show that article from The Hill. Guys, apologize. There's no measles outbreak. There's the wrong article. We're talking about high school boys. You said Gen Z doesn't, it's just, 26, 27 and under.
Through about 12, 13, yep.
To about 12, 13, and then it goes to Generation Alpha, right? It starts over. My nephew is 10 years old. He's an alpha. That's what's up, bro. He's an alpha. But show the graphs. High school boys are trending conservative. And so the red are the boys, and the blue are the girls. They're trending liberal. Thank you, Malik. So this is kind of what I was talking about with Dave Rubin, where like you're seeing all these stats out there, credit to you, but then you see a stat like this, and look, stats are great, and but at the end of the day, you gotta. The boys and the girls have to kind of make the babies, guys, despite popular belief.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
Men can't be birthing people?
Guys.
No way.
I know that I say controversial, outlandish things at times, but yeah.
Wow.
I'm old school. The girls have the babies and the boys have the, what's going on out there. But if they're not getting together, how are they going to make the babies? Here's an article out here that I think we can show about Gen Z dating, because I know you've talked a little bit about this. Amid an epidemic of loneliness, we talked about 18% of Gen Z adults more likely to be diagnosed with anxiety disorder, 23% of Gen Z diagnosed with depression. Obviously, you guys suffered greatly from the lockdowns. It's, you were in college, you were in high school, you're not getting together with your friends. How are they dating? And I see you've said that like they're just kind of done with the dating apps at this point, and that speed dating is making a comeback because Gen Z face dating app fatigue. Malik, you have this article? Here it is right there. Gen Z speed dating is making a comeback. Old school. If you've ever seen the 40-Year-Old Virgin, where Steve Carell goes on the speed dating and he's like, oh, what's your Gina? Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Is it Gina? Nice. 46% of online daters say their experiences were very or somewhat negative. Eventbrite, which is the app that kind of puts parties together and events together, Eventbrite, saw a 63% surge in speed dating events since 2021, and a 43% increase in dating event attendance in 2022 and 2023. 61% of online dating users range between 30 to 50, and 26% are 18 to 29. So evidence showing that Gen Z is sort of done with the dating apps. They want to get out there. They want to speed date, bing, bang, bing, 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 maybe go home with a person named Gina. You never know. What are your thoughts on speed dating over dating apps these days?
I'm not surprised, and I think it really stems from this world we're living in where we spend all of our time through screens. Our job, our school, our entertainment, everything is so two-dimensional that we're trying to break free from that. Dating apps were so popular in my early years of college, and honestly today, I've never downloaded one, which I think most people are really surprised by.
You've never downloaded a dating app?
Never downloaded a dating app. I'm engaged. I'm getting married in like 80 days, which is very exciting.
Brock.
Yeah, Brock is my fiance.
What's
He's
up?
the best. Yep.
Phoenix,
Shout out. I know
Brock,
you're watching at home.
My girl Adi.
But I think
Shout out
there's
to the Dave Rubin crew. It's
this
awesome.
overwhelming push in our generation to delete those apps because we've realized through our own experience or through the experiences of our older siblings or our friends or whatever that constantly swiping left and right and left and right and left and right on edited photos that aren't real, learning everything about somebody in a bio instead of having the fun experience of actually getting to know someone by talking to them in real life. And wanting something that lasts instead of a meaningless hookup every once in a while or 3 weeks later a text from some guy named Chad, you up at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, right? That's not very...
You got my text?
I got your text.
She's getting married.
It's okay. It's okay.
I know Brock. Great dude.
But it's shocking, right, that more people didn't see this coming. And the Match Group that owns more of the dating apps than you could possibly imagine in the space. There's really no competition. They own Twitter, Tinder, they own Hinge, they own a couple other ones, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Match.com.
Match.com. They own all of these apps, so illusion of free choice with competing interests there, but they're freaking out, like literally breathing in a bag of how to retain Gen Z as customers. And I was reading a fascinating article about this the other day. We never talk about it like that as customers. But when you've downloaded an app, you are a user of the app. The app's goal is not to get you to delete the app, despite the bio of Hinge being the app designed to be deleted. Is that Hinge? I don't remember, but it's the app designed to be deleted. They have no interest in helping you do that because they need to retain you for advertising purposes. That's how they make money. It might be Bumble. Okay. No, Bumble? I don't remember. Anyway, I don't know.
Track.
Not my individual.
It's definitely not Grindr.
Definitely not Grindr.
I don't
So they tell you, we want to help you find love. They tell you, we're going to help you delete this app and your life's going to be so great. But who actually experiences that? More often than not, the vast, vast majority of our generation has had horrible experiences. There was a different study that said 90% of Gen Z says that we've had bad experiences on dating apps instead of just 46. So you're watching this mass deletion and this push towards more traditional relationships. Shocking. Who would have thought? Not just monogamous, committed, long-term dating relationships, but wanting to get married. The marriage rate for the first time since COVID is actually going back up in America today. And states like Nevada are having like 30% marriage rates in the last few years, which is insane. That is so far beyond the normal rate, especially as it's been plummeting in the last several years. Divorce rates are going down. Actual dating events like speed dating are coming back. I've been on the Whatever podcast twice in the last year, which is very viral for all kinds of fun dating related conversations with OnlyFans and pornography actresses and
Amy's been on
all kinds of fun stuff. I was actually on Tuesday, and while I was sitting there in Santa Barbara, I'm sitting across the table from two active OnlyFans creators. Most of the girls would have called themselves liberal, progressive, feminist women. And yet we went around the table on Tuesday night just a few days ago, and every single girl raised her hand proudly and said, I want to get married someday.
I ask every single girl who comes here, because I had a very public feud with Chelsea Handler. And I was like, because I'm a little bit older than you guys, I've seen the end of the game. I've seen the girls when they're young and they're hot and they're in their 20s, and I also see them now when they're in their 40s having babies with themselves. And I was like, it's all fun and games when you're hot and you're young and you're 20, but when you're buying yourselves drink at the end of the bar in your 40s, not a good look. So you got to take advantage of your youth and your beauty now. And if you make horrible decisions like OnlyFans or sex workers, the chances of finding that husband will be diminished. By the way, real quick, and I need full disclosure, Pao, have you ever been on any dating apps?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah? How's it going?
Well, it hasn't worked for me, but I know many people who has actually had success stories. So I don't know. I'm kind of like, I get overwhelmed. Like, I don't know. It's like, and sometimes you meet people and they're not how you expected it. I normally go without expectations, but I don't know. I've been trying to also pick like real life, you know?
Real life. Well, one of the things I always say is that, you know, oftentimes when you go on a date, you go have a meal. So I use the metaphor, the analogy that the main course in dating should be real life. Whether it's speed dating or my version of speed dating, going out in South Beach to a bunch of different bars or whatever, go out there in real life. And that's for anything. That's for business, that's for life, that's for relationships. Get the fuck out of your house, get off your phone, get out there. You're in a pretty serious relationship. You ever been on a dating app before your guy?
No, fuck no. I don't like dating apps very much. Definitely not my thing. If other people want to do that, that's fine. But, you know, dating apps, like we were saying earlier, you are the customer. They're not there to get you off the app. They're there to keep you on. And so I think people look at dating apps and they start basing their self-perception and self-worth when they're using these apps off of how many likes am I getting, how many matches am I getting, how many conversations, instead of actually looking at, like, who cares about any of that? Are you actually getting out into the real world, talking and connecting with these people and actually having dates? But I'm not, just because I don't really like the setup of dating apps, because I think there's weird incentives there, that doesn't mean that I'm opposed to people meeting online. Because I think instead of using dating apps, I think most people tend to use like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, other social media accounts, and they slide into each other's DMs. And I think that's probably, if you're interested in like online dating, that's probably a better way to like navigate the online sphere rather than just defaulting to dating apps, which are basically like slot machines but for dating. And typically I'm more into the blood sports style of debate, but Isabel is too kind to get into that with me.
Sweet, right?
We'll have to do it again.
How can you fight with Isabel? She's into the blood sport.
She'll fight with Dave.
Let's remember that.
Dave and
Isabel,
we'll get into it.
How old are you again?
26. I'll be 27
Wise beyond
next
your
month.
years,
Thank you.
very smart, very lovely. I totally understand why you can't argue with her, even though we'd love to see it. Get her book, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America.
Thank you guys so much for cheering me on over the last 6 weeks with the launch of my book, The End of the Alphabet, How Gen Z Can Save America. As a reminder, if you haven't picked up your copy, you can grab yours in the description of this video to help continue spreading the truth and a message of hope about Generation Z and everyone else still to come after us. Don't be afraid to keep remaining optimistic in our constantly pessimistic, doom and gloom, apocalyptic news cycle world. There is no reason to have anything but a smile on our face as we continue our journey of happy warriorship against the insanity of the people pulling the levers of power in culture right now. I am so honored to be partnering with several companies as sponsors of our stream that are embracing that warrior mentality every single day themselves. Want to give a huge shout out to our amazing friends over at Public Square, our headline sponsor that helps to make every single episode of Isabel Brown Live possible. Public Square is approaching 100,000 businesses as America's largest platform of small businesses you know you can reliably count on to share your values that are all pro-family, pro-faith, and pro-freedom. If you own a business or you're looking for businesses to help support that share your values, you can find them all at publicsquare.com. And the world's largest Christian prayer app that is changing how all of us all across the world pray on offense every single day. Hallow is offering you guys a 3-month free trial to all of the 5,000 plus prayers, meditations, mental health resources, podcasts, and more. I promise you, Hallow has completely transformed my faith life for the better. I listen to these prayers at the gym and every other time throughout my day, and it's completely reframed my mentality on making prayer a regular part of my daily routine. I know so many of you guys joined during their Lent Pray 40 campaign, but they've got many other incredible campaigns right around the corner, and even right now in the month of May. You can grab your 3-month free trial to Hallow right now at hallow.com/Isabel. Stay rebellious, tell the truth, read the end of the alphabet, and we're back for the stream live back in person in the studio tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern.